May I inquire?
You're ready, Attorney Green.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And if you could just scooch a little closer to that microphone so everybody can hear you, could you just please introduce yourself to the jurors and spell your last name?
Hi, I'm Katlyn Avery, and it's Avery.
And how old are you?
28,
What town do you live in?
Springfield, Mass.
All right. Have you ever lived in Westfield?
Thank you. Yes.
All right. And how long did you live in Westfield?
About 2 years.
All right.
At the time, at least. I grew up there.
Okay. What was your relationship to Alexis Avery?
That is my baby cousin.
All right. So you're actually related to
Yeah.
Alexis. And aside from your familiar relation, were you close personally?
Yes.
How long had you been friends with Alexis Avery for? Back in 2019.
We had been close pretty much from when I moved up from Florida from when I was 11.
And through your relationship with her, did you come to know somebody by the name of Blake Scanlon?
I did.
All right. Do you see Mr. Scanlon here in the courtroom?
I do, right over here.
Your Honor, may the record reflect identification of the defendant?
Can we do a little better?
Can you just point to him and describe an item of clothing that he might be wearing?
He's over there wearing the white shirt and the black suit.
Thank you.
Thank you. The record may so reflect.
Thank you. Again, just kind of an estimate. How long would you say you had known Blake, back in 2019?
Approximately maybe like 4 or 5 years at the time.
And if you know, what was his relationship with Alexis Avery?
They were friends at first, and then they started dating.
And did they have a child together, if you know?
Yes.
And what was her name?
Darla.
Now, I want to direct your attention back to, again, 2019, and specifically January 11th, which would have been a Friday night. What were you doing, or what were your plans that night?
Me and Lexi planned to go out to have a girls' night.
All right. And when you say we, specifically you and?
Me and Alexis.
Okay. And did you end up at Alexis's mother's house at some point in time?
Yes, we actually met up at her mom Jessica's house because Jessica watched my son Jaden for the night for us to go out.
And was there something about taking somebody's car or whatnot?
Yeah, so my headlight was out in the front of my car, and Blake was going to use Lexi's car to move out that night.
Sustained. Next question.
Didn't motion strike.
Strike the last part.
So let me go back and ask you this. Was Alexis going to be driving her car that night?
No, we planned to drive her mom's car.
Okay. And why is that?
Because my headlight was out in my car, and Blake was planning to use Alexis's car.
Last part is stricken. All right.
Do you know what car Blake took that night when he left?
Alexis's Cobalt.
All right. Chevy Cobalt?
Yes, Chevy Cobalt.
So at some point, are you back in the apartment with Alexis getting ready?
Yes, we drove from Alexis's mom's house back to their apartment, taking both her car and Alexis's mom's.
And if you recall, what was Alexis's mother's car?
It's a Mazda, a red Mazda SUV.
Okay. And when you got back to the apartment, was the defendant there?
Yes.
Could you describe how he was just acting in general?
Distraught, sad, mopey.
Did he say anything in particular?
Yeah, just he mentioned, he can't believe he's losing his family. He didn't want to. Stuff like that.
Okay. Did you see him consume any alcohol at that point?
I did. He grabbed a handle of Bacardi Lemon off the top shelf of their cabinet and took a few swigs.
All right. And did he say anything when he did that, if you know?
Just that he can't believe he's losing his family. He didn't want to lose them.
Okay. Now, you had made plans to go out with Alexis.
Yes.
Did those plans include, if you know, Mr. Scanlon?
No, absolutely not.
All right. Do you know if Mr. Scanlon left the apartment at some point in time?
Yeah, while me and Alexis were getting ready, he did leave probably around, I don't know, 8 approximately maybe.
Sure. All right. So sometime around 8, he left.
Yeah.
And again, in whose car?
And Alexis's Cobalt.
And the two of you are still getting ready?
Yes.
When you say getting ready, what do you mean?
We were doing our makeup, listening to music, you know, dancing around. Alexi had changed her outfit a couple times. Just the regular being girls.
Sure. And it was a long time ago, but if you recall, what was, you called her Lexi?
Yeah.
What was she wearing that night, if you remember?
I remember the outfit that she ended up going out in was like a lighter pink crop top, long sleeve, like sweater, and some dark jeans with holes on the side.
Okay. And where did you go first? What bar?
The Maple Leaf in
All right.
Westfield.
You know approximately what time you got there?
9-ish.
All right. And is that a place that you're familiar with?
Yes.
All right. And when you got to the Maple Leaf, was there anybody else with you at first other than Alexis?
No, people had actually met us up with us there.
All right. And when you say people met up with you there, who, if you know?
Alexis's coworker Scott and one of his friends.
All right. Had you met Scott before?
No.
All right. It was the first night you met him?
Yes.
And how did, if you know, how did Scott know to be at that place?
Alexis had.
Sustained.
Do you know if Alexis attempted to communicate with Scott prior to this night? Not specifically what she said, but did she communicate with him?
Just yes or no? Overruled.
Prior than that night?
No, that night. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yes, she communicated with
Okay.
him.
And so, what happened when Scott showed up? Just generally describe kind of what's going on.
We all met up at the bar, and he bought us a couple shots, and we were just mingling, hanging out, talking. They had been flirting a little bit, and it was just kind of casual at the beginning.
All right. And again, if you know, at that point in time, was Mr. Scanlon at the bar?
Not when we first got there.
Okay. Was Alexis doing anything with her phone?
Yeah, Alexis was very adamant to keep checking her location because her and Blake shared their locations.
Your Honor,
It's overruled.
may we approach?
Sure.
Mr. Avery, I'm just going to rephrase my question and kind of ask you very specifically. Did you see Alexis checking her phone?
Yes.
Did she check her phone more than once?
Yes.
All right. Did she ever show you on her phone what she was checking?
Yes. She showed me Blake's location.
Okay. And when you saw that, could you see where Mr. Scanlon's location was?
The phone's location.
Yes. Could you see the location of the phone
Yes.
communicating with Alexis?
Yes.
All right. All right. Now, I want to just continue with the night. How are things going with Alexis and Scott?
They started flirting a bit more. We had taken a few shots apiece, and they did start kissing at the end of the bar, just kind of feeling each other out.
And did you see the defendant at that bar at any point in time during that night?
Yeah, after I noticed Lexi and Scott had started, flirting a bit more, there was a point where I seen Blake and one of his friends walk in to the bar, so I ran straight up to Alexis and told her, like, we gotta go, Blake's here.
Okay. And what was, specifically when you say flirting and getting along, what was Alexis, what did you see Alexis and Scott doing at the bar?
Like hugging up on each other, flirting, complimenting each other, laughing, kissing, stuff like that.
Okay. Did you go to another place?
We did.
All right.
After
Go ahead.
After he showed up there, we went to go leave, and we decided to go to a different bar so we could avoid any issues.
Where did you decide to go to?
To the Whip.
All right. Did you tell Mr. Scanlon where you were going?
No.
Did you or Alexis, if you know, tell Scott where you were going?
Yes.
Overruled.
Okay. And where did you tell Scott you guys were going?
I actually and she actually both told him we were going to the Whip to meet us there.
Okay. And did you do that?
Yes, we went to the Whip and met up.
As you were leaving, if you recall, what did the defendant do?
As we were leaving
The
Where?
first place, the Maple Leaf.
the Maple Leaf, when we first seen him come in, Alexis ran out behind one side of the bar, and then I seen his friend that he was with. I went up to that friend and I started talking to him, asking like, how was his mood that night?
Yeah, don't get into.
Okay, sorry.
Just what did you see?
I seen Blake go after her outside, and they went and had a conversation outside that I wasn't a part of.
Okay, you couldn't hear the conversation.
No.
Did anything strike you at that point?
Nothing seemed alarming at that time.
All right, that's what I was getting at. So you and Alexis went over to the second place?
The Whip.
Again, do you know approximately what time maybe you got there?
Maybe 10:30, 11. I'm not 100% sure. It was 5 years ago.
Somewhat later in the night?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. And if you know, did Scott and his friend show up at the Whip?
Yes.
All right. Who got there first, if you know, you or him?
I think it was me and Alexis.
Okay. But he got there sometime shortly after?
Yeah, if not around the same time, because their parking lot's kind of big. So.
All right. And describe what you remember seeing of the interactions again between Alexis and Scott. Just their interactions, not what was said, but what were they doing?
The same things pretty much at the Maple Leaf. We were all hanging out. They were flirting. They were kissing. We were taking shots together. They were just in general having a good time with each other.
Okay. At some point in the evening, did you again notice Mr. Scanlon at the Whip?
Yeah, actually, out of nowhere, I looked up and I seen him standing off into the side by the pool tables, kind of just staring at us.
All right. Now you said that at the first place he was with a friend.
Yeah.
All right. What about at the second place?
No, he arrived alone.
Okay. Well, did you see him with anybody while you were there?
No.
All right. And just describe again, as best you can recall, where Mr. Scanlon was.
When I noticed him?
Yes.
Over by the pool tables, like standing off in the corner.
All right. And where were Alexis and Scott?
At the end of a U-shaped bar. So at the end of the U.
All right. Did you talk to Mr. Scanlon?
I did.
And did you initiate that conversation?
I did.
How did you do that?
When I noticed him standing there and he went to come over and talk to Alexis and ask her, what was going on, who was Scott. Alexis introduced Scott to him and said, "This is my coworker, Scott." And then I had pulled Blake out to the patio and I told him, "What are you doing? This isn't going to, help anything."
So that's sustained as to what she said. Ask the next question.
But you had a conversation with him outside on the patio?
Yes.
All right. What did he say to you?
Hold on, I'm sorry. I remember having the conversation with him, and then as I was telling him whatever, he looked over and seen Alexis and Scott hugging, and he said, "Why the fuck are they hugging like that?"
Okay.
And if he keeps seeing that, he was going to fuck him up.
All right. So he said that to you?
Yes.
All right. Did you go back inside at some point?
Yes, after that conversation.
All right. Did you, without getting into details, did you relay some information to Alexis?
I did.
All right. And I want to ask you about this. You mentioned, let me ask you this. Was there a point in time in the night where Alexis's or her mother's key fob went missing?
Yeah.
When did Alexis notice the key missing, if you know?
It was definitely after I had the conversation with Blake.
At the second place, though?
At the second place, because we drove the mom's car to the whip.
Sure.
At some point after that conversation we had, she let me know that, the car key was missing, the fob.
Did you help her look for it?
I did, inside the bar.
Where did you look?
So me and her both looked inside the bar, and then we were kind of separated and we're looking around. After a little bit, I noticed she wasn't in the bar anymore, so I went outside to look for her, and I seen her standing up against her mom's car, and Blake was like standing in front of her, kind of standing over her. And when I walked out, I, said, "Get away from her." And she said, "Oh, he's bothering me."
Objection, Your Honor.
Did he say anything to you?
That he was trying to help her find the key.
Okay. What happened after that interaction?
I had them go separate ways. I went outside and I told Alexis to go in one door, and I told,
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Where did you go, and where did she go, if you know?
she went into the main door or the side door on the left side of the property, and I went around to the front door where you get ID'd, and I went back in that way.
All right. So now I want to jump forward to like about 1 o'clock in the morning or so. Did you have eyes on Alexis at this point? Could you see her in the bar?
No,
All right. Did you know where she was at that time?
I did not.
All right. Was the defendant still at the bar?
Yes,
Did he ask you any questions about Alexis?
he did. He was asking me where she was and what she was doing, and I showed him my phone that I was calling her right in front of him. Like, look, she's not answering me either. I don't know where she's at.
Okay. And you were trying to locate her?
Yes.
And why is that?
She was my ride home, and because it's my little cousin, I want to know what's going on with her.
Yep. Did you find her to get a ride home that night?
I did not.
I'm sorry?
I did not.
Okay. And let me ask you this. You saw the defendant at both bars, right?
Yes.
All right. If you remember, do you recall if he was drinking?
I did not see him drink at either bar.
All right. You had a conversation with him at both places, is that correct?
Yeah, briefly.
And had you ever consumed alcohol in his presence in the past, before this night?
Yes.
Have you ever seen him tipsy or intoxicated.
Yes.
Based on your interactions with him that night, how did he appear to you?
Sober, just distraught, like from the beginning, upset that he was losing his family, like he was saying, but not out of like the ordinary. Like it wasn't alarming.
That's a rule.
Could you understand his words when he spoke with you?
Absolutely.
Is he standing upright, not falling down, things like
Yeah.
that? Did you ever see Alexis again after that night?
I did not.
I'm just going to show you some pictures, and I don't want you to say anything about them. Just take a minute, flip through, and let me know when you're done. Without getting in it, I'm going to ask you about it right now, but do you recognize what is depicted in these images?
Yes.
What are these pictures of?
Me texting Alexis and then me texting her when I couldn't find her too.
And so you were trying to contact with her device, her
Yeah, her phone.
phone.
Yeah.
And just so you're clear, again, not an iPhone expert or anything, but like the blue bubbles
Are me.
are you.
Yes.
Okay. And have you had a chance to look at these just now?
Yeah.
Are these accurate representations of the messages you were sending to Alexis' phone?
Yes.
Can I have this packet mark for identification, please?
Identification only.
L7 sheets.
Your Honor, may we approach?
Sure.
Just very quickly, without getting into specifics, did you attempt to contact Miss Avery's cell phone on Saturday?
Yes.
And did you actually speak with her, hear her voice on Saturday?
No.
I have no further questions.
Have a moment, Your Honor.
Sure.
Ms. Avery. Going back to the night of January 11th, 2019, on that particular night, you also have a child, is that correct?
Yes.
And how old was your child at that time?
Oh my goodness, can I do the math? I'm sorry. 29, 56,
How old was she then?
19. He was 4.
Okay. And so on that particular night, the plan was to go out for a girls' night with Katlyn. Is that correct? I mean, with Alexis, correct?
Yes.
And the plan was that Alexis's grandmother was going to keep both your child and Darla. Is that correct?
No.
No? Okay.
No. Jessica, her mom, kept my son, and her grandmother kept Darla.
Okay. And so you met up to get a car, and then you headed back over to Alexis's house. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you testified that that Blake was talking some about. Well, first of all, you said that he seemed sad,
Yeah.
and I think you used the word mopey.
Yeah.
And I think you also used the word distraught.
Yeah.
That is something, you described him as distraught starting even as early as before you left. Is that a fair recollection of your testimony?
Yeah.
Okay. And you talked to police shortly after this happened. Is that correct?
Yeah, after we got notice that it happened.
Okay. And you talked about that conversation between Alexis and Blake before you left to go out. Do you recall that?
What conversation?
Well, in general, you talked about while everybody was getting ready to go out.
Yeah.
Correct. That you were there and and Alexis was getting ready to go out.
Yes.
And Blake was also getting ready to go out. Correct.
He was just there waiting to leave to go to his friend's house.
Okay.
He was already dressed, like he wasn't getting ready as we were.
Okay, but he was definitely going out. Correct.
Yeah.
And he also left before you guys left the house.
Yes.
And during that time when you were all together at the apartment, he did say something about the future and that there was that maybe they weren't going to continue to be together. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And he specifically said when you talked to police, so when I do leave, what about child support? So do you remember saying that to the police?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was saying, so when I do leave, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, but on that particular night, you and Alexis were going out, correct?
Yes.
And Blake went to his friend's house.
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't know what their plans were with his friends other than that, correct?
No.
All right. But it's fair to say that Maple Leaf is a bar that you've been to in the past?
Yes.
And you've been there with Alexis and Blake in the past?
No.
No?
No.
But it's a local tavern, right?
Yes.
And so is the Whip.
Yes.
Okay. Fair to say that the Whip is the closest bar to their home?
Yeah, I guess the Maple Leaf and the Whip are kind of very close to where their apartment was.
Okay. Doesn't take more than about 3 minutes to get between the Whip and their house. Is that fair?
Probably.
Okay. Now, at the time of, on January 11th, at that point in time, Blake and Alexis, they have actually been on again, off again since about 2016. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were on and off again, but as of New Year's Eve when I was at the house with
Just
them.
answer the question. So
Yes.
they had been on again,
Yep.
off again, correct? Okay. And then as far as when they lived together, though, they moved in together at White Street around June of 2018. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And so they were definitely had moved there during the time that Alexis became pregnant with Darla. Is that
Yeah,
fair?
she was already pregnant.
Okay. And then Darla was born in August, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so Blake lived there, and they were living there at White Street together as a family during that period of time, correct?
Yes.
And so since August all the way through until through Thanksgiving, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And Christmas,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then he's still living there in January 11th of 2019. Correct?
Yes.
Now, during the time while you guys were getting ready to go out, during that period of time, you saw Blake take several swigs of Bacardi. Is that correct?
A couple swigs, yes.
Okay. And, well, you say a couple swigs now. When you talk to police, you
He
said
took
something.
some big sips, is what it was.
Swigs.
Yeah.
And that's what you mean is big gulps straight
Yeah.
from a Bacardi bottle. Correct?
Yes.
And that was a handle, right?
Yes.
And the court reporter is going to tell us that we need to stop talking over each other, so let me finish my questions. So Bacardi, drinking it straight before they go out, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there was other alcohol around the apartment that night, too. Do you recall that?
Not really, to be honest. I didn't go in their fridge or anything, but I do specifically remember the Bacardi lemon right on top of their cabinets.
Okay. And today you say it was 2 or 3 swigs, but when you talked to police, I think you said something more like 4 or 5.
Possibly.
Okay. But it was straight right from the bottle, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit more about the girls' night aspect of it. You and Alexis actually made plans and discussed what you would be doing, and it was something along the lines of going out to eat, or something like that. Is that fair to say?
For food and drinks.
For food and drinks.
Yes.
And at some point in time, though, you knew that you were. It came to pass that Scott Burns and his friend from work joined you all at the Maple Leaf. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point in time, did you know Alexis was inviting Scott?
After we were going to leave her apartment, yes. Prior to us meeting up, no.
Okay. And did you know that she had a crush on him or liked him in some fashion?
No, as far as I knew, it was just a coworker.
Okay. And she hadn't been out with him prior to that. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And that was the first time you met him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now you testified that when Blake came to the Maple Leaf, that you immediately had a reaction to that in terms of what Alexis was doing with Scott at the bar. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you even suggested to her that she needed to knock it off.
Yes.
Okay. And so did she knock it off?
Sort of. We kind of went to a different place to excuse ourselves from being in his presence.
Okay. Now, when you went to the next bar, you said that before you left that Blake and Alexis had a conversation outside before heading over to the whip. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And so you weren't there for that conversation, so you don't know what they spoke about.
I was not.
Okay. So you don't know if Alexis shared where she was going.
As far as I know, she did not.
You don't know that.
I don't know.
Okay. Now, you testified tonight that you did not see Blake drink anything at all at the bar.
I did not see him drink anything at the bar.
Okay, so he's drinking swigs of Bacardi at his home, but at the bar he's not drinking anything.
Yeah,
Okay. And you were drinking that night?
I was.
Did shots with Scott and Alexis? And
Yes.
okay. And about how much did you have to drink that night?
Honestly, I can't recall. It's been 5 years, and there's been a lot to happen since. So, I mean, we had a decent amount to drink. We were out to drink.
Okay. And so you don't recall, you recall Scott buying you shots at the bar,
Yeah.
at the first bar, correct?
Yes.
And he bought you shots at the second bar, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And when you were when Blake came to the first bar, to Maple Leaf, you talked to him for some period of time, correct?
No, not really at the first bar. I talked to his friend.
Okay. And was his friend drinking?
I didn't see him have a drink in his hand. They had just walked in.
Okay. Now, you went to the second bar. You went to the Whip, correct?
Yes.
Now, once you were there, at some point in time, Alexis loses her keys to the car that she's driving that night, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and as far as you know, did she ever find them?
No.
Now, what did you think when you learned that she had lost her keys?
That it was just a small little key fob and that there wasn't really much else on it, so it was easy to lose. And we were kind of looking on the ground because we didn't have purses or like pockets, really. You know, girls put stuff in their shirts.
Okay. And you helped her look inside the bar?
I did.
Okay. And Blake was helping look for the keys too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And he was looking outside the bar?
Yeah. After she had went out, he had went out too.
And he was also helping her look for the keys, correct?
That's what they said.
Okay. And now, at some point in time, and I think it was maybe around 1 o'clock, 1:10 or so, you head back into the bar. Does that sound right in terms of timeline to you?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. And you had actually misplaced, or did you misplace your ID, or did the bar still have it?
So my debit card was like a temporary one. It didn't have my name on it, so they kept my ID with my debit behind the bar. So at first I couldn't get back in. I had to have them bring my ID out.
Okay. And then you got back into the bar?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and you drank some more. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Did you buy your drink, or was...
I had been paying for my own drinks at that point.
Okay. And at that point in time, at some point, Blake was back in the bar with you, and he was talking to you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, he doesn't know where Alexis is.
No.
Okay. And you also don't know where she's gone, correct?
Yes.
Right. And that's concerning to you because she's your ride home?
Yeah, and my little cousin.
Okay. And do you know how many more drinks you had at the bar?
Probably one. Between that all happening and me leaving, just sat on one drink.
Okay. And Blake is sitting there next to you at the bar? Are you sitting at the bar talking?
He's kind of like standing there on the side, and then he would like walk around looking for her and then come stand next to me again asking where she was.
Okay. Now, at some point in time, you lose track of Blake as well. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and so starting around 12:30, is that when you started reaching out and trying to reach Alexis?
I believe so. That the papers do have like the specific numbers of timing, but I believe it was around that time frame. Yes.
Okay. May I approach you?
Yes. Need the ID exhibit? Fill the last ID exhibit.
Will you refresh your memory if you saw the record of your text exchange and your calls to Alexis?
Yeah.
Well, you're taking a look at that. I want to tell the jury about refreshing recollection, okay? So you take a look at that. When a witness, this is refreshing recollection, which is what happened now. When a testifying witness's memory is exhausted as to a matter about which he or she once had knowledge, the witness's memory may be refreshed in the presence of the jury with any writing or other object that permits the witness to further testify from his or her own memory. The writing or object should not be read from or shown to the jury. So she's not to read from her. She's just using this to refresh her recollection about something that she once knew. Okay? That's refreshing recollection.
So based on that, do you think it's fair to say that you started trying to reach Alexis around 12:26 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay. And you called her, and she didn't pick up, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then at some point you started messaging her saying, hey, where are you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at 12:46, you tried to video call her. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And And you're texting, messaging again, asking where she is, correct?
Yes.
Now, is it during that period of time where you show Blake and say, I'm trying to reach her too, I don't know where she's gone?
Yeah, exactly.
Fair to say you're pretty irritated with her at that point.
Not really, more worried.
Well, she was your ride home, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you weren't sure, it was cold outside?
Yeah, it was freezing.
So it wasn't, it was going to be difficult to get home and get an Uber and all that?
Well, not necessarily. It's just either way that she was my ride, so I was worried about where she was.
Okay. And at that point in time, though, you're showing Blake the messages, and he's in the bar with you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So neither of you can find her.
Yes.
Okay. Now, later, you finally do hear back from Alexis sometime about 1:45 a.m. Is that fair to say?
Well, from her phone.
You heard back from her phone, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's at that point in time, that's when you learned that she went with somebody else. Is that fair to say?
That's what I got for a text message. I didn't believe it, though.
Okay. And she went on to, and when it suggested she went with somebody else, you say, is that Scott? Is that correct?
After the next message, I said, what do you mean with who, Scott?
Right, because she texts back and says, he probably left after caught me fucking someone in the truck.
Well, at that point, I don't know if it was her texting me, so it's her phone. Correct, it's her phone.
Okay. And in response to that, you say, what? By someone, you mean Scott? And the reply you get back at 2:06 a.m. is, yeah, LOL.
Yes.
Okay. And you don't attempt to text or message Alexis again until like 8:35 the next morning. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, my keys and stuff were in her house, so I was trying to get that back.
May I have a minute, Your Honor?
Of course.
Now, so you left you left the Maple Leaf because Blake came, and Alexis was flirting and kissing and making out with Scott. Fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, and even if she wasn't, we didn't want to be around him either way, so
But you left because...
we seen Blake come in.
Okay. And then when he comes into the second bar, Alexis is continuing to kiss and flirt and make out with Scott at that bar too, correct?
I don't believe she was necessarily making out with him at the whip, but they were like touchy-feely, huggy right there.
Okay. And at that, you also suggested to her that she knock it off there too, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you understood that it was distressing to Blake, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
You understood that he was distressed about the situation.
Yeah.
How did you get home that night?
Actually, I had a friend come meet up with me, and he drove me home.
Okay. So you had to call somebody to get a ride home?
Yes.
Do you know what time that happened?
Around closing, like I know it was after I actually had gotten one of the first texts back from Alexis's phone. At that point, I was like, there's nothing I can do. I don't know where she is. I can go home.
Okay. So at the time that you got that first text back from her and she said, I left with somebody, you're like,
A little,
oh, I guess.
a little bit after, yeah. Like I still sat there for a little bit.
Because you had to finish up your last drink and pay your tab?
Well, that, and I was just still sitting there kind of thinking over the night, like, what the hell happened?
Okay. And you paid your tab and then you left around closing time,
Yes,
which was about 2 o'clock?
I would guess so, yeah.
No further questions?
All right, yeah, you redirect.
May we approach this briefly?
Yeah, sure.
No, I don't think so. Thank you very much, though. I just have a couple of quick clarification questions.
Okay.
Actually, if I could see that now. This is
44.
44. I'm going to display Exhibit 44. These are numbered 1 through 7, so just for the record, I'm displaying page 6 of 44. You see that image on the monitor?
Yeah, it's actually right behind you as well.
And so the blue is messages that you sent to Alexis's phone,
Yes.
and the white are messages that you got back from Alexis's phone.
Yes.
And is the picture over here in the corner, is that Alexis?
Yeah.
Hard to tell, but all right. And this message, he probably left after caught me fucking someone in truck, LOL. Anything seem odd to you
Objection, Your
about
Honor.
that message?
Overruled.
May I be heard?
You can be heard. Okay, so we're going to ask that question again.
Caitlin, just very specifically, that reply you got, did that seem off to you? Just yes or no?
Yes.
You obviously knew Alexis very well.
Yes.
And did you know how she never would normally spoke and things like that?
Yes.
Counsel asked you a bunch of questions actually at the beginning of the cross-examination about time frames when Alexis and Blake were together. So they were together at Thanksgiving and living together, correct?
Yes.
And at Christmas time.
Yes.
And you started to mention something about New Year's, correct?
Yes.
All right.
It's leading, so no more leading.
Were you present during a conversation between the defendant and Alexis on New Year's Day?
Yes.
Objection.
Well, that's the last leading question, so now go ahead, next question.
Did you hear Alexis?
Sustained.
What do you remember hearing from that conversation?
Well, not the back and forth, just Mr. Scanlon, if she remembers.
All right.
Objection, Your Honor, if I could be heard on that.
If you need to.
I do.
Okay.
If you're-
Some testimony, I expect, members of the jury, regarding a conversation which this witness will say took place on or around January 1, 2019. If you credit that testimony, it's not offered for the truth of any of its content, but you may accept it if you believe it, only as to Mr. Scanlon's state of mind at that time. All right? That is the state of his knowledge, state of mind. Okay? Go ahead.
All right. I'm just going to rephrase the question again. Were you with the defendant and Alexis on New Year's Day?
Yes.
Did they have a conversation about the relationship?
Yes.
Did you overhear that conversation?
Yes. I was sitting right with them.
And to the best of your memory, what was that conversation?
That they were no longer going to be together. Alexis didn't want to be with Blake anymore.
Who initiated that conversation?
It was kind of a group thing. Lexi felt safe that I was there, that she could confront him in that situation.
Sustained. Stricken.
So I'm going to back up a little bit. You were there, Alexis was there, and so was the defendant.
Yes.
And she mentioned something about their relationship.
Yes.
What do you specifically recall her telling him about the relationship?
That she didn't want to be with him anymore.
Okay. And what, if anything, did he say in response to that?
That was,
Overruled.
I can continue. That was actually the very first time that the child support comment was brought up, was that night when the breaking up originally happened. Alexis explained that she wasn't trying to keep him from Darla. And then he instantly started worrying about child support and what was going to happen to him on that level.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No further questions.
All right, recross.
So after that conversation on January 1st, another 10 days passed before you went out again with Alexis.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And you weren't there for every conversation that Blake and Alexis had during that period of time, correct?
Yes.
Correct? You were not there?
Yeah, correct. I was not there.
Okay. So it's fair to say that you heard a conversation on January 1st, but you weren't there for any further conversations they had about the future of their relationship, correct?
In between the 2 days, yes, correct.
No further questions.
All right, you're all set. Thank you, Ms. Avery. Thank you very much.
May we approach, please?
Yeah, do you need, or are we just going to suspend?
Yeah.
Yeah.